psalm, and following along with those words, pictures, and it creates in our minds. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, again we come to you in prayer, and as we have heard the words of this psalm, the messages in this psalm, that is our prayer, that we want to walk where you have walked. That we climb the hill of Calvary with you, where you died for us. My prayer is that we feel close to you because of what you have done for us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Four stories. The first one. It's a story about a fisherman from Minnesota. He felt like he was a very well-prepared fisherman. He knew how to fish. He had everything needed to be a good fisherman. Poles, nets, bait, really nice boat. But this fisherman had a problem. In spite of all his preparation, he never caught anything. Not one fish. Not one. Not ever. You know why he never caught a fish? He never went fishing. He had all the knowledge, he had all the equipment, but he never got into the boat. He never left the dock. Story number 2. This happened years ago, Highway 23 in eastern Kentucky. A father and his young boy, about 9 years old, they frequently traveled down this road, and they always would pass by this church, what had one time been a beautiful church building. An ideal location, but now the church is closed and the windows are broken out. Apparently there hadn't been any services there for years. And as they would drive by this frequently, the father would often wonder in his mind, what happened to that church? Why is that church closed? Why are the windows broken out? And there's weeds growing everywhere. Nobody's taking care of it. And one day as they were driving by, he thought about these questions and he thought about them out loud. And the 9-year-old, the wisdom of a 9-year-old, said, Dad, I know why that church is vacant. The father said, okay, son, tell me why. The 9-year-old boy looks at his father and simply stated, Dad, look, the graveyard by the side of the church, it's full. All their members died. We chuckled. But there's probably an element of truth and wisdom to that little boy's statement. The church never reached out to the community. Story number 3. The survivor, Eva Hart. She remembers that night, April 15 of 1912. Do you know the story of the Titanic? She watched as that mighty vessel plunged 12,000 feet to the Atlantic floor, some 2 hours and 40 minutes after the iceberg tore a 300-foot gash in the starboard side. And she recalls, she says, I saw all the horror of it sinking, and I heard, even more dreadful, the cries of drowning people. Although there were 20 lifeboats and rafts that were launched, which was really too few, and even though they were only partly filled, most of the passengers ended up struggling in the icy seas, while those in the lifeboats, they waited a safe distance away. But there was lifeboat number 14 that it did row back to the scene, and after this unsinkable ship slipped from sight at 2:20 in the morning. Alone, lifeboat number 14 had chased the cries in the darkness, seeking and saving a precious few, and as incredible as it sounds, no other boat joined in. Some of those lifeboats were overloaded, but virtually every other boat Those were already the people who were saved, and they rowed their half-filled boats aimlessly in the night, listening to the cries of the lost. Each boat, each person feared that a crush of unknown swimmers would cling to their craft and it would cause their lifeboat to sink. And as a result of those 2,000 passengers on the Titanic, 1,517 were lost. Story number 4. There was a group of men out hiking, 11 to be exact, in a valley by a mountain range, and they had been directed to come there, actually to meet a man, and they all went along on the hike, but they had some doubts they could see this man. After all, they had just seen him crucified and put into a tomb. And on that walk, they were remembering all that had taken place, the whirlwind of Jesus' ministry on this earth. It was a fast 3 years. It was full of highs, it was full of lows, and at this time their emotions are raw. Their emotions are on edge. As they're walking to this valley, they finally reached their destination in Galilee, not knowing this would be the last time, one of the last times they would see Jesus on this earth. And what he had to say to them was of utmost importance. Jesus said, I came to seek and to save the lost. And then Jesus got closer to them and he said, go and make disciples and baptize them and teach them, and remember, I am with you. Remember, I am with you. And back to that night of the Titanic, as it went down into those icy waters, and no more that large ship was visible, there was another ship about 30 miles away, the California. It was empty. It had no passengers. The operator of the Titanic frantically and repeatedly sent out the SOS. But the wireless set on the California was closed, and because there was only one operator aboard, and he had gone to bed. Help was available, but the Californian sailed on its way, totally unaware of the tragedy. My question to you today, is there someone near you who could use your help? How about your one? The series that we are concluding today, Invite Your One. How about your one? Do you realize you've been appointed by Christ to go out, to reach out? If not now, when? And if not you, who? Jesus told those 11 men to go, and he has commissioned us to do the same, to go. So now it's time to go. We have work to do. Let's stand up and sing our closing hymn. You have it in your bulletin. know the text, Matthew 28, 16 to 20. It's a very familiar text to all of us. In fact, to most Christians. And as I was studying this text, I came across some research from the Barna Group. And in a recent poll that they did, they discovered that 90% of the people in this country claim to be Christians. Then they dug a little deeper with some questions like about the Great Commission from Matthew 28, 19 to 20. Do you know about it? What is it? And 86% responded with the wrong answer or didn't even know what they were being talked to about. 75% did not know what John 3:16 said. And 31% did not know what the gospel is. You see, that's part of the problem. Many Christians either don't know the Great Commission or some may not even live the Great Commission. And while there may be people out there drowning in the treacherous waters that are around, it is so much easier to stay dry and make certain that no one rocks the boat. We can get all the way through the Gospels. We can get all the way through Matthew, and we can enjoy the stories. We even remember some of the stories, but then we come to this passage. Then we come to the Great Commission, and Jesus is giving us a command. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations. Go. All nations. Every tongue, every tribe, every nation. You know, statistically, there's over 7.4 billion people on the earth today. It's an interesting thing to go to Google and put in the question, how many people have not heard of the gospel? How many people have not heard of Jesus? And the statistics that I came across this week, it's like some staggering numbers. It's like, no, I can't be giving all those numbers in a sermon. You need a 10-page report to really understand what the numbers are telling us. And there's the 1040 window, the Joshua Project. It goes on and on. But the bottom line is the experts say that 2/3 of the people have never heard the gospel one time. And when you take the statistics and you extrapolate some data out of it, you come to the conclusion that over 37 million people die every year never having heard the gospel. And while not everyone that has heard the gospel one time accepts the gospel, many more people die every year without hearing the gospel. Perhaps you recall the name of the famous evangelist, Billy Sunday. He was planning on being in a particular city, and he was looking for people that he could talk to, that he could tell about Jesus. And a couple weeks before the meeting there, he sent a letter to the mayor asking for names of individuals the mayor might know who had a spiritual problem and who needed help and prayer. Billy Sunday was so surprised when he received the answer from the mayor. He got a large package in the mail. It contained the city telephone book. Now here's the problem with Christianity. We want all the privileges of God's love without the responsibility for the nations. The point Jesus is making to us in the Great Commission is that the privileges of God's love come with the responsibility for all nations. And we can look at Romans 1, 14 to 15, and some of you read that last evening after the email that I sent out. I am obligated both to Greeks and non-Greeks, both to the wise and the foolish. That is why I'm so eager to preach the gospel also to you in Rome. What is Paul telling us here? He's telling us that we have a debt to every lost person on the earth. And Paul says, I'm owned by Christ, so I owe Christ to the world. And here is an interesting statistic. This one goes back to 1980. A Gallup poll indicated that out of all evangelical American believers, only 2% had introduced another person to Christ. You see, our responsibility is to see the Great Commission completed. And when we look at Christ's work, we see that some of his work is finished and some is unfinished. If we take a look at the finished, that's what Jesus did for us on this earth. John 17:4, I have glorified you on the earth by completing the work you gave me to do. Jesus' work, the redemption on earth, is done. Only he can save people. He's the only way to the Father. But then we look at the unfinished work, the unfinished part of this. And while redemption is complete, evangelism isn't. That's the church's responsibility to share the good news. You know, it's quite easy to determine when something is aflame. It ignites other material. New Samsung phone. Any fire that does not spread will eventually go out. A church without evangelism is a contradiction in terms. Just as a fire that does not burn is a contradiction. God will save people. God will save people, but he needs us. And he wants us. He wants to use us. What the greatest ability is? The greatest ability is availability. Talent is nothing unless you're available to God to use it. And that becomes the first step, be available. And when you look at this passage of the Great Commission there in Matthew 28:16, that's the first thing the disciples did. They became available, they showed up. But then the second step, that's the 5 verbs in this passage. The 5 verbs. Go, make, baptize, teach, and remember. Let's take a look at each one. Think about the word go. You know, this verb implies crossing boundaries. Those imaginary property lines that we talked about in the first sermon on this series. Those imaginary property lines are between our house and the house next door, or the house across the street, or the person sitting across from you in the lunchroom. Take a friend to lunch. Go and invite your one. The second verb is make. You think about that. Make, it really just implies something like a work in progress. You know, we never arrive as Christians because we're all just a family of learners in the faith. Whether we're the newest Christian or perhaps the most spiritually mature, we're still a work in progress. And we all learn from each other as part of that making process. The third verb is to baptize. And this is the event where our whole identity changes. This is when we are saved. We become like what we worship, and we no longer belong to ourselves, but we belong to God. The fourth verb, teach. The verbiage here in this text, I think it's really telling us that we need to keep on teaching them. Because this maturation process, this maturation of a believer is an ongoing, lifelong process. You never stop growing. You think about the two words dynamic and and static and what they mean. And when we apply them to our character, a static character is one who doesn't undergo any significant change in character, personality, or perspective. But a dynamic character, one who is walking in the footsteps of Jesus, undergoes a major transition in one or more of these ways. You know, we never stop going, and you can't grow as a believer unless you go. And then Jesus concludes the Great Commission with the verb of remember. Remember, I'm with you. God is with us through it all. And you go back to verse 17, those 11 men, some of them doubted. Some of them doubted. When they saw him, they worshiped, but some doubted. So what are they doubting? Are they doubting themselves? Are they doubting Jesus? Or are they doubting what they're worshiping? What's going on in their minds? Well, you know, maybe you're experiencing doubt in your life right now, and doubt in the Bible means unbelief. So if doubt means unbelief, and unbelief causes hesitation, then we can conclude that doubt causes us to hesitate doing the Great Commission. So how do we deal with this doubt? Because we all have it. We all experience it at different levels at different times. But Jesus, he knows us. And he tells them that he has all authority. He assures them and then tells them what to do. Go, make, baptize, teach, and remember. These 5 verbs, they apply to us, to each of us. They apply to your one that you're going to invite. All of this is an action of worship. And you can't serve God until you worship him. Remember last week? We serve what we worship. Therefore, we do the Great Commission as an act of worship. These 5 verbs. They are action items of the church. And God wants to use you to accomplish them. So my question to you is, why not you? Why not this church? Or do we believe it? 1879 in London, a man by the name of Charlie Peace. Charlie Peace led a double life. He was a respected businessman during the day and a professional thief at night who let nothing, not even murder, stop him from getting what he wanted. I read that he is a violinist, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the story that I want to, but I wanted to tell you that Charlie Peace was an accomplished violinist. And now he was facing execution by hanging. When he was marched to the gallows, a minister walked behind him. That was the tradition, the custom, that the minister would read aloud from a prayer book. And this was the passage that was read as they're being walked to the hanging. Those who die without Christ experience hell, which is the pain of forever dying, without the release which death itself can bring. When the minister read those chilling words to Charlie stopped marching. He turned to the minister and shouted, "Do you believe that?" The minister was startled, and he stammered for a moment and says, "Well, I suppose I do." "Well, I don't," said the criminal. "But if I did, I'd get down on my hands and knees and I'd crawl over Great Britain, even if it were paved with pieces of broken glass, even if I could rescue just one person from what you just told me." We can believe it. We can believe it because Jesus is faithful to us. Matthew 28:20, he is always faithful, teaching them to observe everything that I have commanded you. And remember, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Some time ago, an 18-year-old girl out in Washington State attended a worship service for the first time in her life. And for the first time in her life, she heard the gospel message. And the following Tuesday, the members of the church received a letter from her, and it reads, "Dear church members, last Sunday I attended your church, and I heard the preacher. In the sermon, the preacher said that all men have sinned and rebelled against God. Because of the rebellion and disobedience, they all face eternal separation from God. But then he also said God loved man and sent his Son, Jesus Christ, into the world to redeem men from their sins, and that all those who believe in him would go to heaven and live with God eternally." She continues in her writing, "My parents recently died in rapid succession. I know they did not believe in Jesus Christ, whom you call the Savior of the world. If what you believe is true, there is no hope for my parents. You compel me to believe that either the message is true, or that you yourself don't believe this message, or that you don't care. You see, we live only 3 blocks from your church, and no one ever told us." Friends, today, I want you to get the message that it's time to finish God's work. And as I've shared with you before, there are 13,500 homes, 3-mile radius around this church. And for some time now, Karen Simmons and a few others have been going out on Saturday afternoon, knocking on doors and handing out the book, Steps to Christ, simply telling people about Jesus. You know what? We don't have to go to the ends of the earth. Our backyard can be the end of the earth for us. And if your desire today is to be part of finishing God's work that he has commissioned us to do, will you raise your hand with me? Earlier in the sermon, we started singing a hymn. Let's stand now and finish singing the hymn. Starting with verse 2.
Bye.
of us will remember this song today, this hymn that we have sung, and that it would remind us that there is a work to finish for God, and now is the time to go. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, today we thank you for your plan of redemption and for accomplishing your work on this earth for us. Father, we know now that you have given us a commission to go and finish the work that you started here, and that you will be with us all the way. And as we think of the 5 verbs from the Great Commission of go, make, baptize, teach, and remember, may we keep these words in our hearts, in our minds, and may we get rid of the imaginary boundaries between us and our neighbor or the person across the table from us at lunch, and invite our one to you. And now, Father, may we have the grace of God and the peace of Jesus, and know that each of us is greatly blessed, highly favored, and perfect, but a forgiven child of God. Amen.